Let's be brutally honest about the state of your grey matter in this particular video. You see, your grey matter is not a storage device. It's not some pristine hard drive where ideas sit neatly indexed waiting for retrieval like obedient little files on your MacBook. That's a comforting fantasy, and it's also completely wrong. You see, your brain is akin to a processor. It is designed to generate insight, not to archive every half-formed rumination you stumble across between your emails and your Instagram feed. And yet, some people treat it like digital warehouses. Then they wonder why they feel mentally congested, full up, distracted, and oddly incompetent considering the amount of information they shove into that bunged up brain box of theirs. And I say this to my clients ad nauseum, to the point where they're probably sick and tired of me hearing it. Your brain is for having ideas, it's not for storing them. And that is going to be the premise of this particular lecture today. Because here's where most people go dreadfully wrong. They think memory is a passive process, as if information just sits there, as if learning is some kind of intellectual hoarding exercise. Read more, consume more, hope something sticks to the wall. And it won't, by the way, it won't. Memory is an active process, violently active if you're doing it properly. And if you actually want to retain anything of value, you need a system that is articulated towards that particular North Star. So let's begin at the beginning. The first and foremost thing that a man needs in his arsenal if he is going to become a competent and high-functioning individual is a capture protocol or capture system. This is where things fall apart for most people, because ideas don't arrive politely. They don't schedule themselves into your calendar between 2 and 2:30 p.m. What they do is they show up mid-task, mid-flow, usually at the exact moment it is most inconvenient. You're in deep work, proper focus, the kind of people who write books about but never actually get to experience themselves. And then suddenly you get an idea, you get insight, you get a divine download, potentially very, very valuable, even monetarily very valuable. And what happens? You either A, ignore it, or 2, you lose it, or 3, you chase it and destroy your current focus. Brilliant system. So the solution is simple in theory, but surprisingly rare in practice. You need a frictionless capture device. Now for me, this has actually changed very recently, and that's actually the impetus behind this video. I've been using something called Claude AI. It sits on the back of my phone, I tap it, I speak into it, and the idea is captured instantly. No typing, no switching context, no disruption whatsoever. Because I've tried everything, guys. I've tried Apple Notes, I've tried Otter AI, I've tried, the analog capturing device with a pen and paper on my person at all times. Kind of, 19th century philosophy looking in coffee shops. I mean, none of them really match the speed and ease of just pressing a button, speaking the thought, and then just moving on. Because let's be honest, I'd love to pretend I'm the kind of person who always carries that leather-bound journal, maybe the inside pocket, ready to immortalize my thoughts in elegant handwriting on my fountain pen. But I'm not. I carry my phone like everybody else, and I feel like it's the most frictionless way and practical and feasible way to start to capture my ideas very seamlessly. So I built a system around reality, not fantasy. Now, capturing the idea is only step 1, and this is where most people get very, very lazy. They get this immediate externalization to to prevent task interruption, right? Those deep flow states, and keeping us into that, alpha state. But we still want to capture the magic. We want to capture the idea, and we want to refine the idea in an editing process. So we've got the idea stored. It's quarantined. The real work begins in what I refer to as the editing process, or more accurately, I call it active rumination, or intentional rumination, or critical thinking. You take this raw idea that's slightly incoherent, this mental spark, and you actually interrogate it. You sit with it, you turn it over, you refine it, you look at it from different perspectives. If it's a business idea, you start asking yourselves uncomfortable questions. Is this really viable? Should I do this business online or should I do it offline? Do I need any staff? What's my overhead? What's the business model? Where does it fall apart? What are the weak points of my particular business? You can see that this isn't a passive process, gentlemen. It's an active process. And it's an active process that most people, they're not strong enough for, if that makes sense. There's a mental tolerance that you need to have in order for the critical thinking process to actually start. Because ideas decay rapidly. What is profound at 10 a.m. often looks embarrassingly active by 8 p.m. That's not failure, by the way. That's just clarity. That's just a different perspective. For more complex ideas, what I would do is I would block out a specific time, deep work, usually fasted, because whether people like it or not, cognition is physiological. Your brain is not separate from your body, despite what most productivity guys or gurus would seem to believe. Oh, you need to start your day with some food. But I see that as redirecting energy from cognition to peristalsis, the contractions that occur in your digestive tract in order to metabolize your morning meal, which could otherwise be used for cognitive power. Now, in terms of remembering things, you could go with flashcards, but in my experience, journaling is far more potent and not typing. It needs to be written. The evidence suggests writing slows you down. It forces engagement. There's a friction there. And in this case, friction is actually exactly what you want. More muscle involvement, more coordination, more time spent with the particular idea. Slow down the cognitive processes. It's harder to drift mentally when your hand is physically dragging the thought or capturing the thought on paper. So my process is simple. Capture throughout the day, and towards the back end of the day, review in the evening. Refine in the evening. An analogy I often use with my clients is that a raw idea is a diamond in the rough, and editing is equal to the polishing and the refining process of the gemstone. Yeah? And then it can shine, and then you can present it to a world in all its beauty. If I come across a word while I'm, reading in the day, I don't pass over it like a passive consumer. I'll quickly capture it on my Plord, and then I'll go back to it at the end of the day and actually learn what that word meant. I capture it, I review it, I layer the exposure. But here's where things get interesting. You can amplify all this by doing something that will make you look slightly unhinged. You can speak out loud. I talk to myself constantly, not because I've completely lost it, although that might be up for debate depending on who you ask, but because it fundamentally works. When you speak, you're adding another sensory layer. You're adding more information, essentially. You're adding more information for your senses to capture and therefore integrate and install into long-term memory. You're hearing the idea, you're feeling the vibration, you're engaging even your vocal cords, your vocal muscles. So you're getting another element of sensory information that is relative to the thing that you're trying to learn. This is multi-sensory consolidation, right? You might have heard of this very trite thing at school that, oh, I'm a visual learner, or I'm an auditory learner, or whatever it might be. And that's not true. The truth is that we learn more, or we absorb and retain information, the more senses are involved. So if there's a kinesthetic element, an auditory element, a visual element, it's not that you prefer one, it's you prefer more information for your senses to pick up on. So you capture it, you refine it, you write it, and then you speak it. Each layer strengthens the signal, and eventually you reach the final stage, right? The final proof. The proof of your mastery and proof of your competence. Teaching. This, quite selfishly, is why I started YouTube. I read a very interesting book called Accelerated Learning by Brian Tracy. And the principle was simple enough, almost to the point of being insulting, which is, if you want to master something, teach it. So that's what I did. Every single concept I've wanted to understand deeply, I've turned into a video. Not because I'm terribly altruistic, and you might believe this, and I do hope you get some value out of these videos, but the motivation is purely selfish. It's so I can improve my competence and my ability to learn and remember the things I want to learn and remember. And teaching forces clarity in a way that passive learning never will. When you explain something, you expose every gap in your thinking, every weak assumption, every vague idea. You cannot hide from it. So the methodology is to teach to learn. The rationale organizes information for other people, and then in subsequent steps, you organize it for yourself. And then what you can do is you can add self-lecturing, which is talking to yourself similar to how I'm talking to myself now, other than, the cameras. You can explain it clearly, so when you journal out loud, you speak through your ideas, you're effectively teaching. You're teaching yourself. You become both the student and the teacher. Yes, you might look slightly unhinged, and your friends and family might put you on a watch list or get you sectioned for 24 to 48 hours, but that's fine. In my opinion, the alternative is far worse. Drifting through life, consuming information, mistaking familiarity for understanding, and never actually thinking for yourself. Sadly, that's the way, it's kind of the way of the world at the moment. Critical thinking is rare. And that's because it's difficult to be completely frank with you. It requires slowing down, it requires friction, it requires effort, and most people, if we're being transparent with ourselves, would rather scroll. So if you take anything from this, it's this. Stop treating your brain like some kind of storage unit. It's not. Start treating it like a system. Have a process for capturing. Have a process for refining. Have a process for engaging deeply. And for the love of God, just think. That's not a theory, it's a fact. Speak soon.